morning. We have a terrific panel this morning to give us an insight into the new consumerization movement in our public sector. And without much further ado, I'd like to bring them all on stage. So let's start with my dear friend and former colleague in the administration, Aaron McKeithen, the Vice President of Strategy and Business Development at RX Ante. Say hello, Aaron.
All right, come on down, brother.
We want to welcome Blake Hall, the founder and CEO of Troop Swap. Blake, get over here, my man. Dan Kaysen, one of the coolest guys at Microsoft, the Senior Director of Public Sector Evangelism. What a great title that is. Hello, sir.
What's up, boss?
Eric Kimmel, I want to welcome you, the founder and CEO of Peer-to-Peer Tutors. Welcome. And if you've done anything in Congress, you got to meet Marcy Harris, the CEO of PopVox. Get over here, Marcy. And Michael Saxey, the Vice President of Regulatory Affairs and General Counsel of O-Power. Get over here. Why don't we sit down over here? All right. Well, look, we're going to have a lot of fun this morning. And I want to begin with a quote from the president on Tuesday night, because I think it might be relevant to the conversation we're going to have. The president said, and I quote, "America has never been about what can be done for us. It's about what can be done by us, together, through the hard and frustrating but necessary work of self-government." Throughout this morning's discussion, you're going to hear stories about how we are solving these problems. And we, in this context, being the entrepreneurial community that's now capable of engaging on a number of public, either directly in the government or publicly influenced sectors. And what we want to do is to shed light on this opportunity, this burgeoning storyline. And what I'd like to do is up front, just ask for a couple of minutes to have our panelists share a bit about what's the nature of the problem they're solving in the public space, just to get you oriented to who these folks are, and then we're going to dive into the lessons that can be learned for you as you proceed to reboot America. So Aaron, brother man, help us lower healthcare costs. What's going on in your world?
Well, I'm Aaron McKeithen, and I approve this message.
Yes, sir.
And that is, I support it.
Thanks. Well, yeah, all good.
Come on, Virginia voters.
Yes, sir. Okay.
So
not today.
So always.
Go.
RX Ante is a company that's providing analytic solutions around the problem of medication adherence and medication use. Every day, you read in the newspaper, we hear on the television, problems related to overuse of medications. Prescription drug, painkillers, it's a big problem in our country. But we also have perhaps a more underappreciated problem of underuse, of patients who have diabetes, who have cardiovascular disease, who don't take their medicines that will help them. Something like 50% of patients prescribed a drug for lowering cholesterol don't take it as prescribed. There's a lot of reasons for that, but it's a big urgent public health priority to figure out how to prevent the problem of medication problems that lead to non-adherence before it happens. Today, what our healthcare system does is it waits until patients have problems and end up in the emergency department, end up spending money and time and having lower quality of care and bad experiences of care because we're not taking advantage of all the opportunities of therapy. A big problem related to that we help to solve is knowing before these problems happen who is going to experience a medication problem, who is going to end up showing up in the emergency department at 2 o'clock in the morning because of some exacerbation in care that could have been prevented. So we apply predictive modeling techniques using large data sets to understand each person's probability of having problems with medication use. And we use that information, these data, to inform how health insurance companies, health plans, emphasizing the word health and health plans, providers, pharmacies, et cetera, help them to take the problem that looks like this, every patient on a drug who could have a problem, down to a list like this of patients that have the highest risk of problems with medication use that will result in bad clinical outcomes, bad cost outcomes, and most importantly, a bad experience for many patients.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Aaron. And you're going to hear a common theme as we go through this. Pay attention to the term accessing large-scale data sets, i.e. claims data. So we'll come back to these themes. All right, brother man, how are you helping our nation's heroes?
Yeah, absolutely. So Blake Hall, a third-generation soldier, grew up in a military family, was over in Iraq leading a platoon that hunted most of the vehicle bomb networks back in 06, 07 for 15 months. Had a good run of it. Had a commander that wanted me to go to a particular business school. He, when he knew that I was leaving the service, said, look, if you're going to go to business school, you're going to apply to Harvard Business School, or I'm not going to write the letter of recommendation. So 8 months after Baghdad, ended up in Cambridge, and I met another ranger there. Summer of 2009, we had a conversation. We looked around, and hiring veterans is a huge topic. Lots of brands try to deliver benefits to service members and veterans in the form of commercial discounts. You even have legislation now where there's a tax incentive for employers if they're going to hire a veteran. But the problem is, how do you identify that someone is in fact a veteran, especially when you're talking about the digital space? So that barrier has prevented brands and government agencies alike from reaching out to service members and veterans online. And an example of that is, right now, if you are going to access either a VA-subsidized skill training program or even a Microsoft e-learning voucher through the Elevate America initiative for veterans, which Microsoft has generally set up, as a veteran, you have to take your separation paperwork, which has your social security number, your birthday, and all of your personally identifiable information, down to a physical location, so Department of Labor office. There's a real problem there in terms of access, right? If you're a veteran who's chosen to live in a rural part of the country, now you're talking about an all-day trip to get an e-learning voucher. If you're in DC, it's not efficient to do that. And more so, what happens if the vendor loses that piece of information? What happens if that veteran leaves their briefcase in a cab, and now there's a form out there that's got everything on it that somebody would need to use to steal their identity? So there's a real problem in terms of access and in terms of liability. What we have done and we'll be announcing here in a few days is built a solution that functions largely like a military version of PayPal, where instead of linking a bank account to your email and address, we tie your military identity to an email and address so that you can use as a single sign-on across the web. So if you see a government-sponsored program, if a particular commercial brand wants to offer a discount, we can sit as a widget on their site, and once we've proofed that member's identity, then we can enable them access. But the key to making that work was getting access to government databases so that we could verify a veteran and a service member's credentials, right? And if you don't have access to that data, we don't exist as an intermediary to connect the sea of goodwill from the civilian community to service members and veterans so that they know that Americans care. And ultimately, our theory of change is if you let the free market wrap its arms around service members and veterans, they will move the needle far faster than the VA or DoD could ever hope to, and we hope to be the platform that enables that.
That's a very compelling story, Blake, and you'll hear again another theme that we'll talk about: lowering barriers to entry by accessing trusted identities online. And I will say, as a great cue to that, a collaboration in both of these stories involving the public sector and our government. Please welcome Ari Matusiak from the White House, my brother.
All right.
All right, we're going to come back over here. Now, Dan, you represent a handoff in many ways between Microsoft and the ecosystem of entrepreneurs and innovators. Could you talk a little bit about the world as you see it, the macro view as to how you're engaging in this matter?
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, I work for Microsoft. We make a product called Halo 4.
Yeah.
You would think nowadays. Thanks, Anisha, and I just want to thank everybody else for being here too. There's a couple things. When Microsoft looks at what's going on from an innovation standpoint and trying to be a catalyst to help people start innovating in areas, there's a couple key things that we specifically try to target from an initiative standpoint. The very first thing is enabling these organizations from a technology standpoint. What can we do to provide technology and services that make it easier for you to get your products up and going, less expensive? So we have our platform technologies, of course. We also have initiatives, programs that allow you to get that stuff at no cost. If you're a startup, we have something called BizSpark that gives you capability to use just about anything Microsoft makes at no cost until you start driving significant revenue, et cetera. So that technology enablement is the key piece, because without that, it's really challenging for organizations to get off the ground. The second one is human capital development, and really helping make sure that there's a good pool of people out there to drive the innovation behind these great ideas. That's one of the biggest things. I was having a discussion yesterday with somebody, said access to actual real capital is not our biggest problem. It's getting people who are qualified and who have the capability to advance our business. So in that, we're doing a couple of things. One, we have initiatives such as Elevate America to help get people certified and trained on Microsoft technologies. And then we're also reaching down into the student communities with the universities, all the way down actually into high school and middle school, to help inspire students to pursue technology careers, technology passion, get them motivated about entrepreneurship and how to engage in that community and help them get ready with that. The third channel is what we're doing to drive the culture in the community around innovation and entrepreneurship. And one of the most impactful things that we do with that is provide, we'll join in the right partnerships with the organizations who are fostering that in the community, such as Startup America, Startup DC, initiatives such as Reboot, and making sure that we're providing the resources to give them the ability to engage with the communities, and then providing additional resources such as office space, technology expertise to engage with the organizations that are building solutions, and those types of things, so that the community can run on itself and the culture can grow without a lot of open needs that Microsoft can fulfill. And with all those things, one of the things that my hope is that Microsoft can be an example of how other large organizations can be that type of engaging entity and a catalyst in the community too. And if we do it, hopefully we can provide the impetus for other organizations to engage the same way.
So you're going to hear that third theme of ecosystem fostering as part of this conversation of the consumerization of the public sector. Eric, I want to share a bit about the problem you're trying to solve. Bill Gates famously said the nation has essentially doubled its per pupil cost, but has seen essentially the same level of outcomes in education. And clearly that's not a sustainable proposition. Share a bit about what Peer-to-Peer Tutors is trying to do in the education space.
Sure. So Peer-to-Peer Tutors is a student-to-student tutoring network. Our education system has 60 million students, K through 12, going to school every single day, and 5 million kindergartners enter our system every year, all eager with the level playing field. Somehow along the way, a quarter of those students don't graduate, and half of those students who are minorities don't graduate. We believe that top high school students are one of the most underutilized assets we have already in our schools, eager to inspire, teach, and support other students to be successful just like them. The difference between what we see in schools today with cross-age and peer tutoring programs and what Peer-to-Peer Tutors does is we make it a paid part-time job for top high school students. We say, all of your A's, all of the excellent coursework that you've done so well in and your communication skills that you've developed as a 10th, 11th, and 12th grader is meaningful. And we train those students, and we hire teachers to support those students, and we track the data. So we run the highest quality peer tutoring programs in the market today in 25 cities, both as a private option in the trillion-dollar education service business that exists per year, as well as working with schools and school districts and nonprofits to support students who need tutors but can't afford them.
That's actually very helpful. Thank you. And I got to tell you, Marcy, you're no stranger to the community here. You've been up and running for quite some time now, and it's pretty exciting. We've had Thomas.gov and other sort of government transparency sites. Participation is a key challenge. Tell me, what's the nature of the problem you were trying to solve in launching PopVox?
Sure. And kudos to Thomas.gov for their launch of their new site at Congress.gov too. So what I, as a congressional staffer, was seeing, and my partner Rashna Chowdhury as an advocate, is there were just these enormous volumes of information being produced for people who were trying to express their opinion to Congress. I like to say that technology made it easier to produce more information, but there was no technology to make it easier to process all of that information. So the signal-to-noise ratio of people sharing their opinion on bills in Congress was just getting way out of control. And so the idea behind PopVox was Congress really does want to hear from constituents, and I tell you that that is absolutely the case, but they don't want to hear from the whole internet. And before a platform like PopVox, the whole internet was what they were hearing from. and increasingly so. So we started with a really simple concept of pulling all of the public data to provide some structure for the way that people express their opinions, and allowing the organizations and associations and others that are already making their opinions known to Congress by endorsing or opposing legislation, et cetera, to place those on the site so that you can find them in one place, which had not really existed before. And then to allow individuals to weigh in to support or oppose specific bills, write their message to Congress. We would verify that they were an actual constituent. They take that extra step to put in their physical address, which we bounce against 3 different databases, and verify that they're a real person. And then deliver the messages into Congress in a way that Congress can more easily process. And then all of that is public and transparent. So the idea is not only is your message, if you're weighing in with an opinion about a bill, going into the congressional office, but it's also visible by anyone who's researching the bill, whether it's the local newspaper or another member of Congress who's trying to make the case to their colleagues to support a position, and the organizations who are advocating, who before were making claims about, we have thousands of people who support this, or we have thousands of people who oppose this, but it's really war of the press release. Who's verifying that? So the idea with PopVox is to bring all that's happening already offline in this world of advocacy and transparency, or advocacy and lobbying online in a transparent and more accountable platform that starts to tamp down the shouting and make sure that there's more actual signal getting through.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much. And when we think about energy in the country, we often think about the supply of energy, the production of wind energy and solar, but we often fail to talk about the information opportunities in energy. Could you share a bit about O-Power's nature of this problem, or approach to this problem?
Sure. All right, how many people here have checked their email today? Raise your hand. All right. How many people, don't raise your hand, but I bet a lot of you have checked your email during this presentation. How many of you have taken a look at your finances either today or this week? How many of you have checked your energy consumption information? There's one in every crowd.
That would be Alex Howard.
So when you think about the challenges, and a lot of this is front and center right now with all the terrible stories we're hearing out of New York and New Jersey. When you think about the challenges that the utility industry faces, our energy sector, whether it's getting renewables online and dealing with the challenges that they present to their business model, whether it's dealing with the new supply that we're going to have to build at some point, whether it's modernizing our grid so that utilities don't even know if you have an outage. They wait for you to call them and tell them. Whether it's dealing at some point with the fact that there's going to need to be a price on carbon. The thing that those challenges all have in common is that customers have to pay for them. There's no way of getting around the fact that customers are going to pay more for energy, and that in order to get these things done, the customer has to be able to feel a sense of understanding and control over their energy bill. And that just doesn't exist right now, because even for the folks who have looked at their energy usage recently, they probably found it pretty hard to digest. When I talk to people, even within utilities, about the utility bill, they don't know what it means. There are 20 lines on there for a bunch of surcharges. They were all adjudicated through a rate case. It's not designed to be customer-facing. So what we've done is we've created a customer engagement platform for the utility industry that presents information in a way that is not only easy to digest for customers, but also motivating to get them to use less. We're working with 80 utilities, 6 countries, millions of households. And the thing that is most exciting about what we've been doing is that we've found that when you give customers information that they can understand and give them some suggestions about ways that they could reduce, they actually do use less. So we've found that information combined with data analytics is a great way to help address part of our joint environmental challenge.
Well, what you've just heard with these initial stories are demands, what I would call a demand economy, seeking to grab a more open and collaborative government as a partner and bringing value in a service sector in each of these respective domains. Ari, as the supplier of some of the information and the fuel that's coming forward, obviously the president led the way with his spirit of open government, but more recently has taken on a bit more of a lean startup approach with the launch of the Presidential Innovation Fellows. Could you share a bit about what you're doing to supply more of the information that will fuel these entrepreneurs?
Absolutely, and thank you for the opportunity. I guess I would say that as a general matter, what you hear today in terms of these stories and what many of you are also bringing are examples of people who are finding gaps in the marketplace where they can fill through innovative solutions that solve not only create a market value and opportunity for business development and job creation, but also have a social outcome as well. And so we've really taken an approach here that has been about bringing in the best entrepreneurs to work collaboratively within government in a lean startup mode to accomplish two basic goals. One is to make your government work better, but then the second is, in doing that, to facilitate a more effective collaboration with private sector entrepreneurs so that you all can do what you do best. And so the Presidential Innovation Fellows is the expression of that, or a expression of that. We've brought 18 entrepreneurs in from across the country to work for 6 months. They basically dropped everything, moved to Washington, and we had a pool of 750 people who all wanted to do that for some reason or another. They don't get a lot of publicity and fame. What they get is an opportunity to work their heads off on these 5 projects. And just to quickly go through the projects, one of them is on open data, unlocking the reams of data like weather and GPS that have create incredible economic benefit, but doing that systematically across agencies. A second that you've heard a little bit about is Blue Button, which is about giving people access to their own health information so that they can use that to make decisions, but also in doing so create a real marketplace for that information and exchange of value to happen in the private sector and in the healthcare industry. The third is called Better Than Cash, which is about, it used to be called the 20% Initiative, but now it's much sexier. And it's sexy because Better Than Cash is really about your tax dollars and the efficiency of them as they're deployed in U.S. foreign aid. It used to be called 20% because $1 out of $5 $1 out of $5 gets taken out through the sticky finger process as we put money out through U.S. foreign assistance. And so we're trying to convert our foreign aid into an electronic payment structure that will be much more efficient. The fourth is called RFP-EZ, which I think is one of the more game-changing projects that we're working on, streamlining the procurement process by taking a real base case around web-based services and contracts of below $150,000 to make it open to high-growth entrepreneurs. If you are a high-growth entrepreneur and you're talking to your investors, the one thing that they will definitely tell you right now is not to go after the $80 billion market that is government procurement, and we want to change that. It doesn't make any sense. And then the last case is something called MyGov, which is about, in essence, changing the interface by which regular citizens access information about government services to make it easier to do things like, change your last name if you get married. And so all of these projects are happening in a lean startup mode, but what is fascinating is that not only are they going to deliver real products and information and services and benefit, but as we've been going out and talking to people across the country about them, everybody gets the import and the potential. So if you go to Wall Street, they say, holy cow, I want to know about that open data because we want to make investments in those plays. If you go to Watts and talk to community leaders, which we did a few weeks ago, they come forward and talk about how the Open Data Initiative could actually create economic benefits and opportunity for their communities and thinking about community partnerships. And so this is just, we see this as the beginning of something, frankly, that Anish really spearheaded when he was in his role as Chief Technology Officer, That's really about the themes that Anish laid out, about reducing barriers, creating more collaboration, and streamlining value.
Well, thank you, Ari. So what we want to do for the remainder of our session is to now get very clear about the lessons for you. These are inspiring stories, to be sure. We celebrate these entrepreneurs. But the question is, what does it mean for you? Let me give you one brief note, and then I'll give you 3 topics we're going to get into here. The note is the manifestation of the consumerization of government is probably best described by DARPA's 2009 program called Transformative Apps. So if you ever want to sort of, what is this consumerization movement? Let me describe it for you very simply. And Blake might be able to attest to this, because I don't know if you actually had any of these challenges in Iraq. But on the Afghanistan side, imagine a warfighter trying to communicate with locals in Pashtun. There are variants of Pashtun throughout Afghanistan. And the old metaphor was the Pentagon would do a big procurement, find a Pashtun to English translator that might be delivered on a mobile phone, and that single app that won the big gajillion-dollar contract after a 15-year contested procurement finally made its way to their device. What Transformative Apps said is quite the opposite. We want hundreds or thousands of Pashtun to English translators available to the warfighter. So what we're going to do is dramatically lower barriers to entry. We're going to enable through a programming interface access to a secure mobile network for the warfighter. And we're going to encourage, in a new business model, the production of applications that don't get paid for being on the App Store. They only get paid if the warfighter downloads it and uses it. So it was a sea change, not just in access to technology, i.e. a marketplace versus a single one procurement to rule them all, but it had these 3 threads: lowering barriers to entry, extending through programming interfaces, opportunities to interface with government in new ways, and the ability to change the business model in which that industry is performing to make a difference. So if you wanted to take any conclusion out of this panel, it is, let's dig into those 3 points. What are the barriers to entry that are falling? What are the opportunities to interconnect on programming interfaces and the like? And how do we foster changes in the business model in which these technologies operate in? So let's go after the first one and talk about lowering barriers to entry. Michael, I'd like to start with you to talk about the Green Button Initiative and OPower's role in actually launching it as a means to open up an apps economy, which actually is fostering your competitors. Could you share a bit about how we're lowering barriers to entry?
Yeah. So with Green Button, one of the things where Anisha showed real leadership is, Green Button is the idea that everybody ought to be able to just get access to their energy data, and that you shouldn't necessarily have to only view your energy data through the prism of the utility that's providing the service to you. And actually what we've seen is that we work primarily with utilities to help, as I mentioned, to help them communicate with consumers. We've been building a platform for them to make, via Green Button, to make their data available to any app developer who wants to come in and meets certain privacy requirements, but wants to come in and find a better way than we've found to go and display the data or engage people with the data. And that's something that actually we're quite excited about. Because,
even though it increases competition in your space.
Well, because for us, what we view as exciting is, from the business side, it makes us a platform, and
Correct.
It makes us, we have the APIs, and so everyone's coming through us to get to the utility. We feel very comfortable about that position, but also we feel comfortable about the idea that you're not. We want to develop a system in which you're going to get lots of different tools to lots of different people, and we feel like we have a mass communication system which we're very comfortable with, and if someone can come in and build on top of that, that's exciting for us. We get new ideas. Maybe we can get inspired by some of those ideas, but also it makes our other objective, not just a business end, but an efficiency end, more likely, because you've got more and more people engaging with energy usage in creative ways.
Thank you. Anyone want to add to this notion in your sectors where barriers to entry are falling? A word or two on that, and we'll get on to the next one.
I can talk.
Yeah, please.
I just talk generally. It's from a technology platform standpoint. the key things that we're seeing that are enablers for all these types of solutions, one, it would be universal connectivity. The fact that anybody can get to that data because pretty much everybody's on a network. The other one would be fairly ubiquity of compute and storage, meaning that's going to be a lot of data sooner or later. The fact that it's available incredibly inexpensively and it's going down all the time. And the compute power to take advantage of that is also coming down significantly. 10 years ago, if I wanted to build a high-end analytics system to take that data and do something functional with it, I had a tremendous capital outlay. You can do it today for pennies on the hour. So it's something that's changed the model, and that means that organizations who want to invest and innovate in this segment, can do so in a way that they've never been able to do before. Those particular barriers bring things down. The other one, specific to this too, is the growth of sensor technology and the ubiquity of sensors and basically the Internet of Things, where we're going to get data in ways and about things that we never ever thought about before. Every phone in here probably has 5 to 6 sensors built into it. And if we had a way to aggregate that data, just now, it would be a tremendous source for a lot of people. You add that to all of your appliances in your home and everything else too. Those resources are going to give us new ways to do things that, again, have broken down the barriers that will enable every single opportunity that you guys are working on.
And I think this theme that we're hearing about the fact that there needs to be better and more robust infrastructure to lower the barriers, in this case, to get startups to launch, to go after these opportunities is the point you're getting at. You made the comment about the API you're fostering out into the ecosystem. In many ways, that's the notion of how it's not just one app developer that's going to win, but they're going to be emerging platforms that emerge on top of government data. Blake, you had really gone into that detail. This is part of the National Secure Trusted Identities Framework. Could you share a bit about NSTIC and how you're thinking about this and the role you're playing to foster an apps economy to help our heroes?
Yeah, I think what's really fascinating is this new market really of digital identity. And just think about what is your identity, right? And what does it touch? Your personal relationships, your education, your experience. You have these formal credentials that you've been issued. You have informal relationships that you influence or fields where you're a thought leader. And what government has done is January 2011, the Obama administration tapped the Department of Commerce to lead the national strategy for a trusted identity in cyberspace. And the framework that they've set up is that government will define, in collaboration with industry, certain levels of identity proofing within which a single sign-on can access government data. And what does that mean? It means that rather than have each individual citizen create a profiles or accessing information on different agencies, if PayPal or Experian or Google has already run you through an identity proofing process where your email and password, that login, think about the way you log into your bank, has already reached a certain level, then you can get increased access to government data from the comfort of your own home. And it's really an empowering kind of framework. And so the way that works is level 1 is sort of all self-selected information. You control your Gmail account, let's say. Level 4 is that credential issuer has biometric data on you, maybe a smart card or fingerprint data, retina scans, things like that, where you can get access to secure facilities. And then kind of level 2 and 3 are somewhere in between, where you've maybe done one of those identity proofing quizzes, like which one of these 5 addresses have you not lived at? So what does that mean? It means that that basically these credential issuers are the ones who are going to sort of power an identity ecosystem that's federated. Government doesn't want to be big brother. They don't, people feel a little bit skeezy if government powers it. So they've said commercial issuers are going to power this federated ecosystem of identity providers. But in order for them often to prove a credential, they have to access government data. So it's this kind of give and take where the government has helped set up a framework, private sector innovates and finds different ways to authenticate credentials, but then how do you go back and tie that back into large sets of data that consumers can access and that and within which credential issuers can set up platforms for different communities that can be served digitally now for the first time. And I think that's really fascinating. What we're doing is one piece of that, and our passion is to serve the military and veteran community. But just imagine any community that if you could verify their identity online, the level to which services would improve and increase.
You know, the Postal Service, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, had done a little bit of an internal study. They found that e-commerce would boost by 10% if people felt more confident in their online identities, which is an example of what you're just describing. Anybody want to say a word or two about APIs and the importance of APIs to lower barriers to entry and increase the consumerization? Any other? Yes, please, Marcy.
So kind of 2 points on that. The first is that we're also seeing kind of the use of the verification with the fact that when people sign into Popbox, they have to provide their physical address and be placed in a congressional district. And we think that there's a lot of use for that for other civic applications, so people who are building apps at the local and state level, and even, you know, whether it's your local PTA or something like that, that being able to sign in with a civic identity as opposed to a Facebook social identity or a LinkedIn professional identity is something that people are really interested in. So kind of on the...
and forgive me, Marcy, you'll be providing that civic identity?
Yes.
That's terrific.
But then in addition to that, in the larger API context, I have to say a little bit about legislative data just because it comes up every time and I'd get pinged by others in the community if it's not mentioned. Work is being done apparently on the Library of Congress side and others to provide legislative data in an API in bulk form, but we continue to cheer those efforts. It's not currently available. We and others scrape Thomas to get official legislative data. Josh Tauber, who was a founder of Popbox and founder of GovTrack, makes that available to lots of other sites that use it, but that's one of those places where government data being available more readily in API format would, again, foster so many other applications. And then for us, we're just kind of getting to the point of making our APIs available. We just, in July, the House Democrats announced that they're using Popbox APIs to take information about organizations that take positions on various bills and feed it directly into their internal intranet. So we see ways that the private sector can use government APIs to fuel their applications, but then again, that government can reuse what the private sector is doing in order to increase their access to information.
So, and that's another theme that we heard from OPower saying that by being a platform provider, you can foster a growing ecosystem. I'm going to come to 2 sectors where the business model is starting to change in health and education. What I'd like to do, if you don't mind, Aaron, is put you on the spot. What's the world in which you're operating in, and how are the incentives changing to facilitate revenue growth for firms like yours?
Sure. Well, the before picture, old healthcare, is doctors, hospitals, pharmacies getting paid when they do stuff. When they see a patient, when they check a lab, when they do something, they get paid for that. In that same old world, they do those things and then they file it away in their manila folder and they slide it into a little spot in their office, and that's the data warehouse or of the old healthcare system. Because we are now rapidly shifting to electronic information, where all that information is going to be together and interoperable, happening around the country right now, as thanks to meaningful use of health IT, we're also at the same time creating new incentives for healthcare stakeholders, hospitals, health insurance companies, to not just get paid for doing stuff at the margin, but rather for getting better outcomes for patients that they're caring for. And so the combination of those 2 things has unleashed a whole lot of innovation and has frankly made us possible. 10 years ago, a year ago, we wouldn't exist because we didn't have the data we need to provide the predictive modeling and decision analysis that we use to provide guidance to healthcare organizations. But moreover, it wouldn't matter anyway because they don't have a business model that benefits from improving at the population level. And so those 2 major sea changes, by the way, are pretty bipartisan. All this talk about how controversial healthcare reform is has really made us think that every aspect of change in healthcare is controversial. But moving from paper to electronic, that's not controversial. It's hard. It's very hard in implementation. But this is something we've had bipartisan support for. And moving away from old healthcare of paying a piecemeal for every service to paying for better care and better results is also bipartisan. So those are 2 tremendous forces that empowered us to be a company, go from 0 to now having 8.5 million patients in a year, actually a little bit less than a year, delivering this service to health plans that now have real incentive to improve care at the population level. They didn't have it a year ago. And so we need more of that. And I think it'll foster even greater innovation and greater results based on these two trends.
We've had in education No Child Left Behind, which facilitated the need for tutoring and so forth, and also Race to the Top under President Obama. Could you share a bit about what the world is that you're operating in and the impact it has on your business model?
Sure. 4 years ago, I lived on 14th Street and U here in DC, and it snowed.
Nice address, by the way.
Thank you.
Very cool.
And it snowed, and I opened up a No Child Left Behind SES proposal. And I said, it's snowing, I can't do any school's out today. So I sat down, and I was fresh out of NYU, and I wrote my first No Child Left Behind proposal to the state of Virginia. It got approved. Now we were able to tutor these students who, basically in a very short form, schools have certain math and reading target scores. If you have a population that has a certain minimum number of students on free or reduced price lunch, and you don't hit those scores for over a year, you then have to provide tutoring under No Child Left Behind in the former world of No Child Left Behind. We were able to then get into all these schools and do all that kind of tutoring, which, speaking frankly, wasn't the most fulfilling work because it's it's extremely it didn't really put the student first. It's very challenging, and then we started to. But I had a No Child Left Behind proposal, so in the state of Maryland, I could basically copy and paste, and I could submit that one. State of New York, I could do the same thing. State of New Jersey, state of Connecticut. And it was interesting, and we built a business line off it. But that all changed. States now have, there are waivers, No Child Left Behind is basically gone, and now there's Race to the Top. And Race to the Top is a great program. As an entrepreneur in peer-to-peer tutors, the majority of that funding is for professional development for teachers. So it's not direct service, which tutoring is. So things have changed for us, but we've evolved by building meaningful relationships with community nonprofits, with school districts, so that we continue to provide quality services to students who can't afford private tutors, but being very creative about how that funding is made available. At the same time, the other factor that is new, and I think is a great opportunity both for our schools and for our businesses, is Common Core standards. One of the ways that the larger education service companies are able to scale their businesses is that the SAT is the same SAT in every high school across America. And with something like Common Core, we can level the playing field, and with peer-to-peer, there's so much concern from teachers, from schools, and from parents about what does that mean for my child. And I think a peer-to-peer approach is a great opportunity to get everybody up to speed on and aligned around the benefits of Common Core in a faster way.
Well, you've heard a phenomenal panel and a description about how barriers to entry are falling and new business models are emerging. And it ushers a great opportunity, I think, for the country to solve problems through innovation and entrepreneurship. We're going to be shifting shortly to have our first keynote speaker, Tom Davis, present to us, who's been a leader in the Congress on these issues. But I thought, well, just rapid fire final statement. There's a theme here about speed to market that we kind of hit but didn't really hit home. Government procurement is measured in years and protests and all kinds of junk, and it's annoying. These folks get things done in weeks or months. So in the last just minute, 30 seconds, anybody want to talk about speed to market, and then we'll turn it over to Godfather Tom Davis. Anyone wants to talk about how fast you got to market? Go ahead.
Well, what I would say is, the faster the data is opened up, the faster we can move, right? I mean, if you let Y Combinator type talent get access to data, you're going to see the free market move in a matter of months, if not weeks. Sometimes you can throw an application together. And so things like the VA claims process, which is under fire, right now there's no transparency about which one of the veteran service organizations are doing a really good job of processing veteran claims, even though they're taking power of attorney from veterans. I think that's a huge transparency. It's in the public interest of the veteran to have that data. Right now, it's not out there. But if you make it public, you will find an app for it right away that veterans can use.
Yes?
Yeah, two things. So one, I tell policymakers and regulators all the time. When I talk to them, they'll often say things like, yeah, we're moving really quickly on that. We're going to be finished with this in 3-4 years. And I tell them 3 or 4 years, a company like ours would be out of business if we had to wait for you. And so I think one thing is that's a reality. And so if you're thinking about how to get into a market, how to open up an opportunity, you have to both find the opportunities that are there now and then also work for the opportunities that are going to be there down the line. And you got to be able to work on both at the same time. I think one of the things that's helped for us is that there was a market today for energy efficiency. We were able to get into that market, and that's given us the fuel to be able to work on longer term things.
All right, we're at overtime, but Marcy, you get the last word. Bring us home.
Very quickly, I just want to give a big high five to the focus on Lean Startup. The idea behind Lean Startup is that you can put something out that's not perfect and improve it, and that is so different from the way government has operated in the past, and it is a way to move forward and get things done, and it's great.
Amen. Thank you. Hey, give them a big round of applause. The panel rocked. Thank you very much.